This Three Beards Media podcast may contain mature themes and may not be suitable for all audiences.
All right, welcome back to another episode in the Eye of the Storm, in the Side of the Storm. I'm Dave Larson with my Storm team partner Marcus Pfizer and Brent Curvey, who will be on shortly. Marcus, how are you?
Doing well, Dave. How about yourself?
Good. I've got some work to do with cleaning up that introduction. That's for sure. Hey, we've got a special guest today, another legend. I am surrounded by legends on this program. Keith Sims, I'd like to introduce you, second round draft pick of the 1990 draft by the Miami Dolphins, pick number 39. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Turned out to be an 11-year career with both the Dolphins and I suppose I could say the Redskins at the time, right?
You have to at the time.
Three-time Pro Bowl member and a ISU Hall of Fame member, 2006. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Definitely appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure as well. And I think we actually know a former teammate of yours, Paul Thibodeau.
Tibbs, yes, of course. Absolutely. He's here in Atlanta as well.
When I was a college student, I was a resident hall director or a resident hall staff member, and he was my director.
Wow.
Small world.
Very small world. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, so walk us through your experiences at Iowa State. You came in the mid 80s. If memory serves me, was it Coach Kreiner or Coach Walden that recruited you?
Coach Jim Kreiner recruited me. Actually, the recruiting coach that recruited me from New Jersey, his name was Frankie D'Alonzo, and he came to my high school, found me, definitely came to my wrestling matches, and really convinced me to take a recruiting trip to Iowa State, a place I had never heard of until he walked in at my high school that fateful day.
So at that time, you were a pretty big guy even then, were you not?
I definitely was. I was never one of those players that had to stress to gain weight. I think my height, and I tell my son this, at 8th grade, I was 5'8" and 180 pounds. And by the time I left high school as a senior, I was 6'3", 300 pounds, which back in 1985, that was unheard of to be that big.
Well, I remember you playing at Iowa State, and you were a bulldozer. I mean, you move people around, and you were an unstoppable force on that offensive line. What are some of your memories of those days playing at Iowa State and playing in Ames?
Well, Ames has such a fond place in my heart for all those years I was there. I mean, first of all, going out there, I got to tell you a quick story. I went out there on a recruiting trip, and there's not a lot of people from New Jersey at the time that knew much about Iowa. And we got together with some of the best players in the state of New Jersey, and they said, "You went to Iowa State for recruiting trip. What was it like? Did everybody have an outhouse?" And I'm like, "No." Did they have running water? Yes. Did they have electricity? Yes. I mean, back in '85, there wasn't a lot of you weren't really known on the East Coast. So I got out there, and I really loved the people first and foremost. I really enjoyed the people of Ames. The student body was fantastic. And the fan base for a program that hadn't really won much was outstanding. Coach Kreiner was really trying to build something special when he recruited our class. I was one of 5 freshman offensive linemen that was recruited that year. And I was actually technically scheduled, and I was redshirting my freshman year. And we actually we won the first 2 games, got off to a slow start after that, ended up losing at home to Drake. And I was actually out in Des Moines with my girlfriend, got back to the towers, and everyone was like, hey, Coach Kreiner's looking for you. And when you're 18 years old and you've been gone, you wonder, what did I do wrong?
Right.
Well, I went down to the football office, and he sat me down in his office, and he said, hey, Keith, I see how you're working in practice. You're not afraid of anybody. You play hard, and I would like to start you on Saturday. And I'm like, okay. And he said, go call your mom. So I went and called my mom, and we were actually playing the 10th ranked Kansas Jayhawk that next Saturday, and we beat them at home that year. So it was a fun start to my football career at Iowa State.
Well, we're hoping for a repeat situation this weekend when we host the Jayhawks at the Jack, 6 p.m. on Saturday.
Yes, I'll be watching that game. Trust me.
Absolutely.
So what pulled you to Ames? I mean, you made reference, no one really knew much about the Iowa State Cyclones at the time. We weren't really on many players' radars. What drew you to Ames?
That's a great question. It was a combination of a couple of things. I ended up not playing football until I was a freshman in high school. So I played as a freshman, and I had an absolutely horrendously bad freshman football season. And I was never going to play football again. I was just going to wrestle. And we got a new coach, and he started bugging me. Hey, Keith, you got to come out. You got to come out. I didn't even want to hear it. Well, that summer, I had my summer job, which was the greatest high school job ever. I was a janitor for the summer, and we basically painted classrooms, which was a union job, which was phenomenal. And the head coach would come up, hey, you got to come out, you got to come out, you got to come out. I said, no. Well, he ended up making me a deal. He said, you come out for 1 week, give it a shot, and if you don't like it, I'll let you quit, and I'll leave you alone. Well, of course, I fell in love with the sport. Started as a sophomore defensive tackle, ended up going on to start for 3 years, and my high school was terrible. We won 3 games my sophomore year, 3 games my junior year, and 1 game my senior year. So even though I was big, I was strong, I was athletic, I wasn't that confident in me as a player. I can remember coming home. We used to play our games on Saturday morning because we didn't have lights on our field, our home games. So I would come home after losing, and I would be distraught, almost in tears, talking to my mom and saying, hey, Mom and Dad, am I terrible? Or is it the team? And they would always tell me, hey, just play your best and you'll be noticed. Do your best. Make sure when you step off the field, there's nothing more you could have done. And I played hard each and every Saturday morning or Friday night. And when I got recruited out, I got recruited to West Virginia, Maryland, Boston College, Penn State. Well, Penn State dropped off there. I even had a poster of, I hate to say it, I had a poster of the Hawkeyes in my room. I had a poster of Doug Flutie on a chair in front of his offensive lineman. So I was recruited by a bunch of these East Coast schools, and I was going to go to the University of Maryland because that's where my sister was going. So I thought, perfect connection. I'm going to go there. And unfortunately, my recruiting trip weekend happened to coincide with the weekend that Len Bias passed away.
Ooh.
So the campus was a little bit crazy at that time. And I said, okay, you know what? Just for kicks, I'll take a trip out to Iowa. So I took a trip out there. It was like an Indian summer day. It wasn't that cold. I went out there. I looked at the program, even though the offensive linemen were huge. 2 starting tackles were 6'7", 6'8", Kevin Eggleston and Bruce Westermeyer. We had big guards. In the back of my mind, I said, you know what? I can play here. And some schools wanted me for offensive tackle, or offensive line, some of them wanted for defensive tackle. So I wasn't sure. I said, Iowa State definitely wanted offensive line. I said, okay. The 2 best schools in the country were Oklahoma and Nebraska. And they didn't even send me a recruiting letter. I thought, okay, if I come out and play in the Big 8, I get a chance to measure myself up against the best every single year. So I said, you know what? This is, along with the education, I was studying engineering. I said, you know what? This is a place where I think I can be really comfortable. And I wanted to see something different from the East Coast. I was ready to kind of cut the cord from my parents and force myself to grow up a little bit more. So I thought Ames was a great place. And as I tell my kids and my players, hey, you know what? It was one of the best decisions of my life.
Well, we would certainly agree with you on there. You made reference about starting as a freshman, and at that time, we're seeing a lot of that today under Matt Campbell, right? He's giving these high level recruits an opportunity. If they prove themselves, they get that chance to play. But back when you came in, you didn't see a lot of freshmen playing, especially at offensive line, on the offensive line.
Absolutely. And I don't want to say it in a negative way, but also as a black offensive lineman, that was kind of unheard of back in that day. There wasn't very many of us. And when I first got to Iowa State, I got to be honest, I felt that resistance because when Coach Kreiner started me that Saturday, he actually benched the senior captain, Bruce Westermeyer, to start me. So you can imagine I wasn't the most popular player in the offensive line room at that point until they saw me play and realized that I could help them. And then they immediately accepted me, embraced me, and I was part of the brotherhood.
So you had some big games playing for the Cyclones then. 4-year starter. Is that correct?
It is. My journey's pretty interesting because, as I said, I was redshirted for those first 3-4 games of the year. And then I started the rest of the season, started the next year, and then we Coach Kreiner got fired and Coach Walden came in. So I ended up starting the first 3 games of the year of Coach Walden's first year. I think it was 86, and I had turf toe. So I remember he called me in the office after the 3rd game and said, "Hey, Keith, we're not going to be very good this year. We're a rebuilding year. We're trying to build this thing. And I really would like to have you for 2 more full seasons. So why don't I give you a medical red shirt?" And I thought, sure. He said, "It'll help you with your studies. You'll be able to have no issue graduating, and you can get your toe healthy." And I said, sure. So I ended up medical redshirting in 86, 86, and then came back and started my final 2 years. So I had an opportunity to start a maximum of 44 games, and I did it in an unorthodox way. I started 3 years of freshman, sitting out 3, and then sitting out 3 my junior year as well, and then reclaiming them.
That's great story to be able to tell. What was that transition like to go from Coach Kreiner to Coach Walden? And if memory serves me, Coach Kreiner had left. There was some things that maybe were going on behind the scenes that predicated that move. But when Coach Walden came in, what was that process like of him taking over, new schemes, new offensive philosophy? What was that like for you from an offensive line perspective?
Well, for the offensive line, we went through a lot of change in my 5 years at Iowa State. I think I had 3 or 4 different offensive line coaches. I think it's 3. So that's a lot of change in there. I fell in love with Coach Walden's offense. It was a very pro-style offense. Our Steve Morton was the offensive line coach. Really taught me about the game. It wasn't just about blocking the man in front of you. It was like seeing not only the second level of the defense, but understanding the third level of the defense. And I truly believe playing under Coach Walden and his pro-style offense really prepared me for life in the NFL. Nothing against Coach Kreiner, what he was trying to do. Coach Walden was really into game planning and scheming, and his offense really took advantage of those programs that were set in stone, that they just did it the way they did it, and they didn't adjust necessarily to what we were trying to do offensively. And I can think back to my senior year in Oklahoma. We played them at home and unfortunately lost a shootout. It was like 45-43 or something like that. We really should have beat them, but that game or that Saturday, we had the most offensive yards and points against Oklahoma in their history. They gave up more yards to us because we had a scheme. Something as simple as we took our fullback and we moved him out in the slot, and they would take their weak side linebacker and cover him. Well, there was nobody there in that hole behind myself and Gene Williams. So as long as we got our blocks, Blaze Bryant was clear in the hole, and we rushed, and we did things like that. We dictated what we wanted the defense to do under Coach Walden. So offensively, I really loved the transition. Coach Walden was a great guy. He really talked to us, and I really liked his staff. I loved his offensive line coach he brought in, Steve Morton. He a man after my own heart. He wasn't one of those guys that would yell and scream at you. He didn't curse at you. But what he would say is, "Hey, Keith, you know what? I was disappointed in your play." And that's my personality. And if he said those words to me, I did everything in my power never to hear those words again. You could curse, yell, scream all you want. That doesn't affect me. But if you tell me you're disappointed in the way my output, what I did, oh my goodness, I will break my back to never have you say that about me again. So I really connected with the way he coached us and the way Coach Walden coached us.
And Marcus, you had a similar situation, right? Because you went from one coach to another to from Coach Floyd to Coach Eustace. What was that transition like for you on the basketball squad?
Well, as intense as people knew Coach Tim Floyd as being, Coach Larry Eustace was that times 10. So for the most part, I was getting the same guy, but it was amplified a lot more. But they've always been good friends, close friends for a lot of years. So I guess for Coach Eustace, he knew what to expect or what he was getting with me and the player. So I was excited to, see what he was going to do when he came in, and he totally transformed my game. He brought in a lot of discipline, a ton of discipline. He was that coach. Same thing. He wasn't, on. There's been so many stories about, you know.
I'm good. Yeah.
Oh, sound like we've lost
Yeah,
Marcus.
I think he got muted.
No
Somehow
problem.
his mic went mute.
That's all right.
There he is. Okay.
We back on?
You're back on.
We're good.
I unplugged.
So
Yeah, I'm an amateur
Marcus,
at this.
that's right. So you're talking about the transition and really transformation
right.
for you as a player into that first round draft pick that you became.
Well, I mean, that's all Larry Eustace and a lot of Jamal Tinsley. Jamal Tinsley and Larry Eustace, those two guys together. But like I said, Larry brought in a lot of discipline, for what I was coming out of high school, McDonald All-American, and instantly starting as a freshman and having success my freshman year, going into that second year and having him to come in and it was at times we were butting heads when he was threatening to kick me out of practice, because he was showing me that he was a coach and this as a team is how we were going to go. And we had a lot of ups and downs. We didn't have a great success my sophomore year, but going in from that sophomore year to that junior year, we got in some more players. We were able to move Mike Nurse from the point guard to the spot where he can shoot the ball the way he can, and everything opened up. Me and Stevie Johnson was the starters. He and I was trying to get every rebound that came off the board. And Kentrell Horton was just, a beast of all beasts. He probably should have been on the football field with Keith and the rest of those guys. But, he was able to do a lot of good things for us, and we just gelled together as a team, and, the rest is history.
Well, and Stevie Johnson ended up playing a little bit of football there at the end, didn't he?
Yeah. He and I always talked about how much football was, our favorite sport, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to get none of it in. And he was.
It looks like you made the right choice.
So, one question I have for both of you: with Colorado coming back, what are your thoughts on some of these old Big 8 teams coming back into the conference and back into the fold?
For me personally, I have a love-hate relationship with it because my son, who's 14, who would love to be a Cyclone one day, he loved to follow in Dad's footsteps coming to Iowa State. He loves Coach Prime in Colorado, so he wanted me to get him a Colorado sweatshirt. So I'm like, you got your Iowa State gear. It's hard for me to pay money for a Colorado sweatshirt, but Dia and I were teammates in Washington. So I kind of said, okay, he was my teammate. We tried to win games together on the field. So, and I love what he's doing in Colorado. And since they're no longer in the Big 8 or the Big 12, that, hey, I can deal with it. I like what he's doing there. I wish him the best of success there. And I will support him as long as he's not playing my Cyclones.
Well, I'm excited, extremely excited. I was kind of sad to see, them leave the Big 12 when they first left. But the things that Coach Prime is doing there now with his sons and those guys on that field, it's going to be exciting to see, that come into Iowa State and having to match up with them. The barometer of what they're going to do in the Big 12 coming back, where we're going to be able to continuously do in the Big 12. It's an exciting time right now for us all, for us to be sitting, what are we tied with first and tied for first place in the Big 12 right now?
Yes, we are.
So that's big. The way the season started, we want to continue to keep that momentum going into next year. And hopefully when I don't know if it's going to be on the road or at home, but no matter where it is, hopefully, Coach Prime and those guys get that L. I'm the same way. My sons is coming up behind me if they, like the different schools and stuff like that. Like if they were at that school, okay, I can understand supporting it. But if you're not at that school, then it's going to be hard for me to do that.
Oh, totally. I still cannot see the black and gold to this day. Okay. My sister got a scholarship and graduated from the University of Iowa Law School. But I said, I'll support you, but I can't support that school.
All right, Keith. So what do you think of our new school color?
Not at all.
With the black unis.
I love it. I took my son out to the Jack Trice game. We were just at Ames a couple weeks ago, and it was phenomenal being back. And I had a chance to sit down and talk to Matt Campbell again. I love what he's done for the program. The youth, these kids are so different than we were. These uniforms, the color of the helmets, all these things, you need to have that to recruit the best players. So if that's what the kids want, then you got to give them what they want. If that's going to give you that recruiting edge. So back in the day, we had one or two uniform home and away, and that was it. It's a little bit different these days, and that's fine. I love what they're doing. I love the black uniforms. I love the black helmets. I love the Jack Trice jersey. I love that whole thing. I mean, it's phenomenal. I just when I go back to Ames, and I've been back twice in the last 2 years. I went back to Texas 2 years ago, and then obviously the TCU game this year. The facilities are incredible. What the student athletes have, nutrition, educate, all that stuff is. I joke to my son, you wouldn't believe what I had to deal with when I was at this thing, and it was still a magical experience for me. Right. So now these guys have absolutely no excuse not to give their best and to play their best.
All right, so let's dig into that a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the facilities at that time for both of you guys, because you're right. It is a big night and day. There's been significant investments made in the last 10, 15, 20 years. What was it like when you were in school from a facility standpoint? Did you have a hot tub at all?
I don't remember if we had hot tub. We just had the Olsen building was at the edge of the stadium. So we had the open sides on either end. It was grass on either end. We didn't have bleachers on the end. I mean,
the wind tunnel that blew through there.
Yes, it was definitely old school. I keep wanting to try to find a picture to show my son and say, see how what I had versus what players have today. But it was, for going to college in '85 and the early '90s, it wasn't bad. It wasn't what Oklahoma, Nebraska had, but we had enough to compete at that time. I think the game has changed so much that they need what they have today just to put themselves on an even playing field. Whereas to me, it was the place to grind. I'll give you an example. When I got drafted by Miami and I went down to the Dolphin training camp, our Iowa State training facility, our weight room was 3 times the size of the one we had in Miami. We literally had, if you remember, the meeting rooms had the old desk and chairs where it was right in front of you and to kind of squeeze in. School or desk. I couldn't believe this is a professional facility where they win. But we went to our brand new facility 2 years later. But it just goes to show you don't necessarily need all those amenities to win. You just need the right people in the right place with the right coaching staff and the right motivation.
Right. And
what was it like for you, Mark?
I think most of our training and lifting and everything, if it wasn't Actor Jacobson or it probably was at the rec center, upstairs with the wrestling team will practice and things like that. So we will have to go all the way over to the rec center. I used to live in Larch, so it wasn't that far. It wasn't that far of a trip, but still, at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you wasn't trying to make that trek. But same thing like you said. I mean, we were focused on hooping. Mm-hmm. That's it. We knew we weren't Texas. We knew we weren't Kansas and Oklahoma and all that. So once the playing field got even, being inside of that square, that's now you got to deal with us. However much hard work that we had to put in or what we had to grind through on the outside, that's something totally different. Like I said before, I think most of our basketball practices was at the Forker. We hated practicing at the Hilton because it was, the full-size court, so you definitely don't want that. And it was cold in there, really, really cold. So just dealing with all of that, by the time we got onto the floor to play the games, it was time to take it out on somebody. So maybe, the advantage was for us to have to go through that and then, pave the way for the guys that are there now. And like you guys say, like it's day and night. It's been a couple of years since I've been back, but when I was back for the Hall of Fame, it was just ridiculous the amount of things that these guys have now. And then, they're still working hard. Like he said, that those are the things that we need to, continue to compete with the other schools we're recruiting and all that different stuff. We understand and we get it. We understand technology is better. Things are different now. We kind of wish that it was around when we were there, but we understand that's just not the time and how it was. But we're totally grateful and blessed for everything Iowa State was able to, put before us and give us the opportunity to ultimately be pros.
Yeah.
So Keith, then you were drafted 1990 draft, and that was a heck of a draft. So I've got here Jeff George was the number one pick, and that was the draft class with Junior Seau.
Yep.
And your partner in crime, Richmond Webb, was drafted in the first round by the Dolphins as well, and Emmitt Smith, 17th in that same round. What was the draft day like for you at that time? Obviously now it's a 3-day spectacle. The ESPN, NFL Network, we all talked about it for months leading up to the draft. What was it like back in 1990?
It was a bittersweet experience for me. I'm from New Jersey. The draft was in New York. So my agent and I, we got a suite at the hotel where the draft was being held, the Marriott Marquis. So we have a suite upstairs, and I ventured down to the draft floor about an hour or so before the draft started, and there was noise swirling because ESPN was covering it. And that's when I first met Junior Seau for the first time. So we meet each other, and I'm selected to be a first-round pick at that point. I was rated as the top guard in the country, and I was slated to go number 2 or number 3, the first or the second or third offensive lineman. So that morning, I'm at the draft, and I get a call from Miami. It's Coach Shula. Calls me up and says, well, how much do you weigh, Keith? And I said, about 309 pounds. He said, okay. I've never had a 300-pounder here. I said, I can handle it. I said, okay. He said, here's what's going to happen. San Diego has the 5th pick in the draft, okay? They need an offensive lineman desperately. The number 1 offensive lineman in the draft was Richmond Webb, the tackle from Texas A&M. They're going to take Richmond. We got number 9. We're going to take you at 9. I'm like, great, no problem. I'd love to be in Miami. So he hangs up. I go down to the draft floor. I meet Junior Seau. Well, Junior Seau is a junior. My draft year was the first year that juniors were allowed to be drafted. Okay, that changed the entire draft at that point. So juniors on there, and Tampa Bay had the 4th pick in the draft, and they wanted a linebacker. So they were going to draft Junior Seau. And Junior Seau came out that morning on ESPN and said, if Tampa Bay selects me, I'm going back to California. I'm going back to school. So now Tampa's got an issue. What do you do? So draft comes. Jeff George goes 1. Blair Thomas goes 2. Hall of Famer Cortez Kennedy goes 3. Tampa's on the clock at 4. What do? Do they believe Junior Seau or not? So they decide they're not going to draft him, and they draft Keith McCants, a linebacker out of Alabama. So now San Diego, who desperately needs an offensive lineman, is saying, do I take Richmond Webb, number 5, or do I take the hometown boy, Junior Seau? They take Junior Seau. Now Miami's on the clock at 9. They're like, well, we never thought Richmond Webb was going to be there. So they take Richmond. So, pre-draft, you go to different cities and that kind of stuff. You visit different coaches. I can remember my last visit was the 49ers. George Seifert had me in his office. He's like, Keith, there's no way you will be here. But if you're there, you're a 49er. You're not going to get past our pick. I'm like, cool, no problem. With 30 picks at that time. So back to the draft day. I'm seeing guys get picked. The Rams are on the clock at 14. And they call me like, hey, we really need a center. Can you play center? Of course I'm going to say, absolutely I can play center.
Right.
No
Absolutely.
problem. I will play
Absolutely.
center for my entire career. Now, the funny part
Right.
about that is some scouts had asked about me playing center before the start of my senior year. And Steve Morton came to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to let you start at center a couple games just so you can get film." So
Huh.
they moved the center to guard, and I started the first 3 games of my senior year at center. So I have tape of me playing center, so I'm confident. So I'm like, okay, Rams are on the clock. I think, okay, they're gonna pick me. They put the card up, and they call out the name of Vern Brostek from University of Washington. I'm like, oh, God. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, the worst case scenario, I'll be a 49. Pick after pick, junior after junior, pick after pick goes. We get to the final pick in the first round. 49ers on the clock, and they select Dexter Carter, little itty bitty running back out of Florida State. So now I'm really upset. I leave the room, and the Marriott Marquis is like an Embassy Suites where you have the 4 walls where you can walk around and see down in the lobby. So I remember I walked out of my suite and around the corner. We're as far away as you can get from the room. My mom and I are walking, and she's like, "Don't worry, son. It'll be fine. It'll be okay." I'm like, I really, my goal was to be a first round pick. Obviously, that's gone. I don't know where I'm going to go now. And then my agent sticks his head up there and says, "Miami's on the phone." So I run back over, and it's Shula, and he's like, "I don't know how in the world you were here, but there is no way I'm not going to take you. I was going to take you at 9. I'm taking you at 39. You're a Miami Dolphin." And they picked me, got on a plane the next day, and went down to Miami for our first mini camp. And they installed Richmond and I as rookies in that first mini camp to protect Marino's blindside, and we never left that spot.
That is an incredible story.
Big time.
It's all, and I tell every time, God rest his soul, every time Junior and I hang out, I said, "It's your fault, Junior, that I wasn't a first round pick." But he's like, "Keith, we were at the Pro Bowl together a couple times." Like, "Hey, it looks like it worked out." I'm like, "Yeah, it did, but still would have rather been a first round pick than a second." But
It's those young guys that come out as juniors, right, Marcus? It's guys like you that decide to go to school early.
Now, the interesting fact about my draft, you had 2 offensive linemen go in the first round and 2 go in the second round. That's never happened since. You always see 4, 5, 6 going for. That was because all those juniors came in and pushed us all down, and it was a run on those premium positions, and they didn't value offensive linemen. And the guy the Rams took in the first round, Byrne, he lasted 3 years, and he was done.
All right, we're going to take a quick time out. I want to learn a little bit more about your days with the Dolphins, and we still need to talk some Cyclone football. So let's go ahead and take a break and hear from our sponsor, Revelton Distillery.
At Revelton Distilling Company, everyone has become a part of the Revelton family. From the Taylors and their daughter who helped perfect their award-winning gins, to the team who installed Lucy, our 33-foot-tall custom-made still, right down to the local farms that provide our coveted corn, and even the cows on those farms who consume our mash byproduct. Want to see the farm to flask come to life? Now you can tour Lucy and find out where we take Iowa's harvest and transform it into our finest spirits. Choose between a 45-minute tour or find out even more by scheduling a VIP behind-the-scenes tour to get the taste of the full Revelton experience. You can visit them at 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa, or find all of Revelton's award-winning spirits at any local grocery or spirits retailer.
All right. Thank you to Revelton. This is my drink of choice tonight. After being outside, we have our trick or treat night in Central Iowa. So I've got the whiskey liqueur here. This is really good stuff. I don't even need to mix it with anything. I just drink it right straight. So enjoying my Revelton tonight. So the 1990 Dolphins, you guys came out, you had a really successful season, and you played with some outstanding, some all-time great players with the Dolphins. Tell us a little bit about that first year.
My first minicamp, I told you about how they drafted me, and they inserted us into that first practice of minicamp. And Marino walks in the huddle, he sticks out his hand. "Hey, I'm Dan Marino." I'm like, we know who you are, Dan. So he said, just keep me upright.
Right.
Just keep me upright. I said, no problem. So my rookie year, we ended up second place in the AFC East. We won 12 games. Ended up playing the Chiefs in a playoff game at home. I actually have a picture in my weight room. We ended up winning. It was a really emotional night that first year because Coach Shula's wife had passed away that week from cancer. So there was a kind of eerie feeling around the stadium, and we really wanted to win that game for him. And we ended up coming back. We were down by about 6 with a minute and a half to go. I remember walking on that field. Marino walks in the huddle and he said, just give me some time, guys. And we drive down the field. And I can remember the play. I can close my eyes and see it. It was a pass play to the right. We're on the 10-yard line. He throws it to Mark Clayton. The DB gambles to go for the pick. Mark puts out his hands, catches the ball, and runs in the end zone. I have a picture of my fist raised in the end zone of all of us celebrating my first playoff game, first playoff win. And I was blessed to have a lot of success with the Dolphins. We won a lot of football games. That was the standard under Coach Shula. Every time we came to training camp, the number one goal for our team was to win the division. Because if you win a division, you guarantee yourself not only a playoff spot, but a home playoff game. And we were always focusing on trying to compete for a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, we didn't get there. We won a ton of games with Coach Shula, made a lot of playoffs, but it was a phenomenal time I had in Miami. I really enjoyed myself. I loved being part of that program and history. And I'm blessed that a couple of years ago we did our top 50 players team all time, top 50 players the first 50 years of the Miami Dolphins, and I was elected on that team. It was a really, really special night to be down in Miami with all those great players, Zonka and Kick and Paul Warfield and all the offensive linemen, Dwight Stevenson. I mean, we have such a rich history in Miami of great players. So when you go down there, you feel that responsibility of putting that jersey on and carrying on the legacy of all those players that came before you. And I was blessed to get a chance to really get to know a bunch of the guys from the 72 undefeated team, still known to this day. Love Mercury Morris. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that unfortunately a lot of them are passing on now, but they really instilled, hey, there's a way to do it the right way in Miami. That's what Coach Shula was all about. It was a great honor to be drafted by him, and it was a great honor to play for him and play with all those players in that organization. To this day, I was really blessed to have that time.
Tell us a little bit about Coach Shula. I mean, we know him as one of the all-time greats, first coach for the Miami Dolphins. You were part of that transition to Jimmy Johnson.
Yep.
What was it like playing under Coach Shula and all the experience and knowledge that he had?
I'll tell you, my first real interaction with shoes. Okay, so get drafted in the second round. Back then, there was a whole week of rookie camp before the veterans came. So my agent and I are negotiating our contracts, and we basically got the term set up. But the sticking point was my agent and I wanted a 3-year contract, and Miami wanted us to sign a 4 or a 5-year contract. So I flew down to Miami when my agent called and told me, hey, the terms are done except for this one point, but come on down. So I went down there, and they still didn't hash it out. I rented a car, didn't know where I was, just hopped on the turnpike, went down to Miami, got to St. Thomas University where training camp is. I went in the training, the room, the equipment room after practice, and I remember going to the training room and I saw Richmond Webb. He was laying on the training table getting an IV, and he was just covered in sweat. I said, hey, you okay? He's like, oh, man, it's tough down here. Did you sign? I said, no. He said, then get out of here. They're going to make you practice. So I jumped in my car. And I just hit 95 and I drove north until I came across a hotel. I checked in and waited for my agent to get to town. He came to town the next day. He's like, I finally got him to come off the 5-year and a 3-year. So we go back to camp together. We go to sign. We're sitting in there and Shula comes in the room and I'm glad we got this done, Keith. And for the next 10 minutes, he cursed me up and down. Because we're here, we're trying to win. You're part of this team. We need you to help us win. Blah blah blah. I mean, just went on and on. I'm feeling smaller and smaller and smaller in this room because this is Don Shula doing this. And he looked at me and said, "What kind of player do you want to be for this organization?" And I didn't hesitate. I said, "Hey, I don't want to just start, coach. I want to be a Pro Bowl player." And he goes, "I'm going to hold you that standard every day." And by God, he pushed and prodded and needled me for 3 years. And then back then, in order to make the Pro Bowl, the way it worked, there's 2 ballots that come out of every team. You can't vote for your own players. So we would get together as a team. We would vote for 1 AFC ballot, and Coach Shula would get 1 ballot. So there's only 30 teams. The fans weren't voting. So it was a real honor and really difficult to get in the Pro Bowl. So we vote. We have the team meeting. We're in this auditorium type room, and he's calling off the Pro Bowlers. Hey, Dan Marino, you're a Pro Bowler. Richmond Webb, you're a Pro Bowler. And he paused, and he looked up, and he looked, there's 50 players in there. And I see him looking at me, and he goes, Keith, go call your mom. You're a Pro Bowler. And I was so excited. And he was generally happy and ecstatic for me because we set that goal together. He pushed me to get there. So he was happy when I achieved it. But the best part about it is he knew I could achieve it. And then he held me to that standard. Not just before, but every day after that. Gave me a different level of respect, but also expected more out of me because I had achieved that. So I loved Coach Shula. He was a great coach. He got the best out of me, and I really appreciated everything he did for our team and for the players. And like I said, I talked to the guys from the 70s, from the 80s, and every one of them. We all have different stories of how Shula treated us. But at the end of the day, he got the best out of each and every team he coached.
Marcus, what was your first contract like?
Well, in the NBA, there's no negotiating for the first round. So wherever you get drafted, whatever pick that is just slotted. So your agent doesn't have to do any kind of negotiation. You just know if you go number 1, number 10, number 15. There's a scale that they have, and you know exactly what you're going to be making. So it's an easier, I guess you would say, maybe an easier transition. That's why you don't have guys like, which we totally understand, NFL guys, what they put their bodies through and everything like that, the holding out and stuff like that. So we totally get that. But on the NBA side, it's a whole lot different where it doesn't matter where you're going in the draft. The scale is where it is, and number 1 player makes what he makes, and the number 10 player, 15 player, whatever. So it was easier transition for me to, get on in there and start, training and practicing. And it was easier for me also because I was already in Chicago training with Tim Grover in Chicago, and just, so happened I got drafted by them. So the transition was extremely easy. I just, drove right over to the practice facility and, started the summer workouts and got ready for the summer league, and the rest was, downhill from there.
And the NFL has gone to that same kind of system. We call it the rookie wage scale, where everything's slotted for the first couple rounds, where if you're the 10th pick, you're getting this much. It's going to be a 5-year guarantee or 3-year. It's a 5-year guaranteed contract, and they have the option year. We negotiated that. I was a player rep for 3 years of my time in Miami and Washington, so I was part of those negotiations. So we tried to get the veterans more money by slotting the rookies into a wage scale. So I think most sports are trying to go that to kind of take some of the pressure off, because you need players in camp, you need them to practice, and those negotiations can be sticky sometimes and a lot of hard feelings.
Right.
So I want to ask this question, Keith. The spike game.
Yes.
You're playing the New York Jets, I believe, in East Rutherford.
Yes, we were.
So you're basically in your own backyard where you grew up, or pretty darn close.
30 minutes from where I grew up, yep.
And if memory serves me, Marino's coming up to spike the ball, or we all think that he's going to spike the ball, and instead he throws a touchdown pass. What were you thinking during that game? I mean, that was just a heads up play that he did. It looked like you guys were thinking he was going to spike it as well, but how surprised were you when he didn't?
We've got to give all the credit in the world to Bernie Kosar, because that's a play that we actually practiced, and Bernie brought to the team. He was Marino's backup that year, so we didn't have a special call for it. We just had the spike, and we would have not known when he was going to do it. But that game was such an odd football game. In the Meadowlands, you go through in the old Meadowlands, you went through the same tunnel. There's a home and away team came through the same tunnel, and you just broke off left and right once you came through. So we didn't play well in the first half, and we expected to win that game. I mean, the Jets weren't very good. They got up by, I think, 2 or 3 touchdowns on us. And I remember never being so pissed off in my life walking in the Meadowlands, because we got in that locker room and we were yelling at each other. How can we be down touchdown to this team? So we knew we were going to come back. Now, the Jets, on the other hand, we're walking in the tunnel pissed off. They're walking in quiet as church mouse. They couldn't believe they were ahead of Miami right now. So when we came out, we were fired up and ready to go. Obviously, it was a great second half comeback. And if you watch that clip, I didn't know he was going to throw it, because I just stood up and stopped. And my guy didn't rush, and then he started to rush, but it hit Mark Ingram in the corner against Aaron Glenn, and it was one of the top plays of all time. And like I said, it's because of Bernie Kosar brought that to our team, and Dan executed it flawlessly. Mark Ingram did a phenomenal job of running the route, back shoulder catch, caught it, and we scored and we won that game. So thank you for putting me in the history books of some of the top plays in NFL history all time because of that play. There's a couple more, so it was a lot of fun.
So you show that to your son though, right?
I showed it to my son. With the internet, the way it is today, I coach high school football. These guys go out and look at everything you've done in the past. They look up they're quoting interviews from me. I remember my rookie year, Richard and I did an interview on the old Inside the NFL. And this is 1990 because when Richmond Webb and I started at left tackle, we were the first ever rookies to start on the left side together on an offensive line in NFL history. And it took 20 plus years for it to happen again. I think it just happened recently in the last 5 years or so. So they went back and were making fun of the clothes I was wearing in that interview, as a 21-year-old rookie in the NFL. So it keeps you young. And my son's seen it, my kids have seen all the things we've done, all the interviews. It's out there, and they find it and bring it back, and we have a good laugh about it.
Well, I've got a play that you need to show. Oh, and now Shipley is showing us that play as it happened.
Oh, yeah, it's right there before that.
So at this point,
yes, he just did a spike for us. He just did his normal spike, which to us means, hey, he's just going to spike the ball. But watch, I will just step and stand up, and I just watch it like I was a spectator. It was phenomenal. 22 seconds left. It was a special game, man. That was a lot of fun to be part of that game, and we had no clue at that point that it was going to go down as one of the top 10 plays of NFL history. But I can tell you, we were pretty happy at winning that game. My parents were in the stands. I had friends in the stands because every time we went back to the Meadowlands, I always had to get extra tickets for friends and family. So it was great to have that kind of victory at home in front of a crowd that was there to support me as well.
Well, at some point in the next day or so, I want you to pull up on YouTube. There is a video of Marcus Pfizer posterizing Chris Mim with the Texas Longhorns that has gone down in infamy for the Iowa State Cyclone men's basketball team.
I definitely will check that out. Trust me.
That wasn't as big as that play, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was just an advance to the next round or getting past Texas in the Big 12. So it wasn't as big as Dan Marino throwing that pass.
Well,
we got a clip. You guys are good. I got to tell you, one of my favorite things about being at Iowa State was going to Hilton Coliseum and watching our basketball team play. I mean, that was back in the Jeff Hornacek, Jeff Greer days. I mean, I remember beating Danny Thomas. We beat them at home when they were ranked number 1. I mean, the crowds at Hilton Coliseum, it goes back to the fan support. Iowa State fans have been phenomenal throughout the years. The support they give to the program, the athletes, and the players is unbelievable. It's such a special place. Is it perfect? No place on earth is perfect. But I was telling my son when we were there for the TCU game, there's something special about going back to Ames and being around those people and being around the fans that even, I'm going to date myself when I say 20, 30 years later, they still are very kind to me and treat me really, really well. It's a real special place.
As a student athlete, did you have much interaction with the other sports? And really, that's a question for both of you. As a student athlete, I imagine today there's the Stark Performance Center and, there's some of the facilities that I think multiple teams use. But what was that like when you were both playing?
Well, I can answer for me. I had a pretty interesting roommate in college. I met a female women's basketball player at Iowa State, Lori Decker. She actually asked me to dance one night at Destination, the club there. We became friends, and we ended up becoming roommates and lived together my final 2 years at Ames. So I got to know the whole women's basketball team, ended up supporting them, always went to volleyball matches as well. To me, it was something special to go support the other athletes in the program. Obviously, the basketball team was there. Since I wrestled in high school, I enjoyed going to wrestling matches and that kind of thing. So I wasn't a big clubber. I didn't drink, so I didn't, I found my fun other places than that. So I enjoyed being around other people, and I love sporting events. So supporting my other athletes at my university was number one on my thing. And like I said, when I when my roommate was playing basketball, I was, especially back then, because we weren't very good in women's basketball back then. So I was one of the few people in the stands, but I was definitely there to support them, and they were there to support us.
Yeah, it's the same for me, especially with football. With football still being my favorite sport, and especially back then when I was a kid at Iowa State, I was definitely not trying to miss any of the football games. It doesn't matter if practice was going on long or we had a hard practice. I still try to, get myself together, even in the cold weather, to make it over there to watch the football team play and perform. Um, living in Larch, we had a lot of, of the other student athletes that were in the same dorm. So baseball players, was baseball team back then. Baseball players was there, and a lot of the soccer players and tennis and pretty much all the sports were mixed in between Maple Willow Larch. So we had a lot of interaction within, it wasn't training table because we were at training table for the athletes, most of the athletes, but a lot of times we used to go down to the regular cafeteria where everyone was together and be at. We actually used to get in trouble a lot of times because they used to try to make us, you guys got to go to training table. But we were trying to interact with the other student athletes and the regular students, but as much as we could, like Keith said, I didn't drink, smoke cigarettes, anything like that. Don't do any kind of clubbing and partying and things like that. So if majority of my time wasn't trying to, recruit and get my rest and get my energy and stuff, any time that I could go to a sporting event, I try my best to go out and support. Even if they, came to mind or not. At that point in time, we didn't have, of course, we didn't have cell phones and internet and all that different crazy stuff. So there's no way of even knowing. You were just, being a kid and, trying to focus on having fun, playing your sport. And, if they saw you at the game or if they were at the game, they, we all interacted and talked about it, afterwards. And that's how we would know. But other than that, we were just, just trying to support each other, top to bottom.
Keith, what are you up to today?
Well, now I'm pretty much retired now. When I finished football, I don't know if you heard of Dunkin' Donuts. I was a franchisee. We had about 15 stores in South Florida. Sold that. Then I went into TV and media and did that with the Miami Dolphins for a couple of years. Was a sideline reporter, pregame, postgame, TV and radio, and then we moved to Atlanta about 5 years ago. And I'm pretty much retired. But my 14-year-old decided he wanted to start playing football 2 years ago. So I helped coach his youth league. And then my wife said, well, if he's going to continue, I want to make sure he has good coaching. So why don't you try to get on the staff? And there was a brand new AI high school opening up near our house. So contacted the coach, and he was welcomed me with open arms. So I'm the varsity offensive line coach for them. And my son finished we just had our locker clean out today. He finished his freshman year. He started on JV, and he played a little varsity. He's just got to get a little bigger. He's tall already at 14. He's already 6'1", we're size 13, and he's got this huge wingspan. He's just got to pick up some weight. He's only about 160 right now, so hopefully we'll get him up to 200 next year. But he's fallen in love with the sport, and I keep telling him, hey, you don't have to play because Dad played. You got to do what you got to do. He's like, no, Dad, I really, really love it. And like I said, when we went out to Iowa State a couple weeks ago, he was totally in love with it. Once again, they were phenomenal. Gave him a complete tour of the facilities. Like I said, Matt Campbell came out to talk to him. All the coaches, he got to see Dad's picture in the offensive line room. So it's pretty special for him, and I hope he does well. Now, I had an older son who went on. He played in college. He played in St. John's in Minnesota, but he didn't really have the work ethic. And I always told him, don't go try to play in college. It's a full-time job unless you're ready to do work. And he got up to St. John's in Minnesota and broke his ankle as a freshman. I told my wife he's done. He just kind of hung on the team to get the money for a couple of years. And he graduated, so he's doing well. But he didn't have the same kind of love or work ethic that's necessary. So he was a good high school player, but that's probably where it ended. So,
how does it feel knowing that perhaps one of the greatest quarterbacks in Iowa State history grew up a Miami Dolphins fan?
Who isn't a Dolphin fan? Come on now. No, I think it's fantastic. For me, I've been a Dolphin fan since the day they drafted me, and I wanted to get to the Super Bowl. I wanted to get Dan Marino an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl, and we fell short twice, AFC Championship game, and didn't get it done. And the Dolphins have not been able to get back since the early 80s. And our time is coming. So as a Dolphin fan, I hope this is the year or it's coming up because I really like what they've done to team. Tyreek Hill, obviously Tua staying healthy. They've got all the weapons they need offensively.
Right.
We just got to put that run together. You got to stay healthy, put that run together, and get past the Kansas Cities of the world and the Jacksonvilles. We'll see what happens, but I would love to see my team in the Super Bowl.
Well, they seem to be really holding their own now. How much are you tracking the Iowa State football team at this point?
My son and I turned the game on. That's one of the most fun things now. We talked about when we were in college, you could never see Iowa State on TV. Now, every single week, FS1, Fox Sports. I've watched just about every game this year, and I'll be watching the Kansas game this year because it'll be on TV. So that's something that's really cool and unique, and I think it's really helped with recruiting and helped with the alumni base. That now we can see our team, not just see highlights or scores. We can see it live. So I was obviously disappointed in the Ohio game, but things happen. It's a young football team, and we were big fans of that group led by Brees Hall and Brock Purdy. So that was phenomenal to see all the success they had. Again, I wear my Iowa State stuff around Georgia and Miami with tremendous amount of pride right now, and people know, oh, Iowa State, yeah, our names, right? Yeah, people know that school. It's not. Did you say Ohio State? No, it's not Ohio State. Or it's
I
not,
get that a lot too.
Or you're the Hawkeyes, right? No, we're not the Hawkeyes.
No, right? Yeah. You went to Iowa, right? And we're like, no, the other school. Get it right immediately.
So it's definitely helped my pride in being an alumni. I'm really proud of the program and proud of what Matt Campbell's done. And looking forward to what they're going to do.
Morning, you have
Sorry, my wife's on the Alexa.
No, that's okay. So Baylor, that was a great game on Saturday.
Oh.
It really felt like we were in control the entire game.
Yes.
I tweeted it during the game, but I really felt like Nate Shieldhouse controlled the tempo of the game and kept Baylor's defense off guard the entire game. Rocco had a few throws that he overthrew, but otherwise he looked sharp again. And the transformation this team has taken since that Ohio game has been remarkable.
And that happens when you have a young football team. You mentioned at the start of the show where we got a lot of young players playing, a lot of new players in different positions, and it takes time to grow into a system and to understand how to win a football game. The program I coach at here in Georgia, it's the second year of existence for the high school. So we launched the program last year. We were all freshmen and all sophomores. We had 6 seniors who finished up their career Saturday. So when you're building a program, which I'm trying to tell these young kids, it's you got to understand what it takes to win. We went from no wins last year to 3-7 this year, and we should have been at least 5-5 or 7-3. But it took us losing games to understand how to win a game. We were in positions that we weren't used to being in. The first time after losing all your games last year, the first time you go into a locker room ahead, you don't know what that feels like. And you don't know how to respond when something bad goes. And every game, whether it be football or basketball, you're going to have your ups and downs. You have to understand how not to get too high and not to get too low and respond when you need to. And I think our team here in Beaufort, Georgia, we figured that out a little bit this year, but we're still young. So I see that same growth in this Iowa State team where they're in positions they haven't been. Losing to Ohio, a team that no one expected them to lose to, put them in a little bit of funk and they fought their way out. Now they're in a position where they're tied for first in the Big 12 division. If they win Saturday, if they can figure out a way to win Saturday, hey, they're really going to launch themselves. And you got Kansas coming off a huge victory. So Kansas has got to figure out how do they come down from the high of beating Oklahoma where you pull the goalposts off the field and then play Iowa State and not play down or have a bad game. So I think it's going to be a great football game, and I'll be rooting for my Cyclones.
And 6:00 kickoff, night game. Jack Trice. It should be a great night for football. Marcus, are you heading back for the KU game?
No, I probably won't get a chance to head back for the game, but I definitely will be locked in. That's only 4:00, out here in Vegas. So, like you said, we get to see our guys, on TV every week, basketball or football. We get to see them pretty much every week, and every single, like you said, I wear my my gear around all day long. Sweatshirts when I'm at the gym or whatever. People recognize, Iowa State, the logo and all of that, and it feels good. And definitely, I try to get in before when the games are coming on. In the weight room here where we live is three big, like, I don't know, like 60-inch TVs. So I try to make sure every TV is on, playing. So wherever I am in the gym, I got my angle that I can see. I take my headphones off while I'm just listening to the game. You hear a little reverberation back from the different TVs, but I don't care. They be screaming and I'd be watching the games and just having a good time. And I try to stay in the weight room the entire game. And when about the end of the games come around is when I start to, taping my workout off. And then afterwards, hopefully we're leaving there with the victory and I can feel good the rest of the night.
How do you think this game's going to take shape, Marcus, on Saturday against Kansas?
I think the guys are going to come out extremely excited and ready to play. We know that Kansas just got a big win against Oklahoma. You tend to understand how that type team wants to keep that momentum, but at the same time, we just came off of a win. When like you said, we control the whole entire game. Like you have those feelings in certain games where it's like, okay, we know this is going to be a competitive game, or whatever, or what could happen, but you just feel like everything is going for us tonight, and we're going to take care of business. We're going to handle this one. So the one that's coming Saturday, we're going to be on the big stage. A lot of, sports pundits are going to be talking about it all week long, like we're talking about it now. And we're going to prepare for that, and it's going to be a good win for us to get Saturday night and roll over into the next week, when everybody's talking about, how good the game was.
At this point, we control our own destiny with these last 4 games. Yeah. If I hate to say, but if we win out, we're in the Big 12 championship game. Who would have thought that a few weeks ago? So Absolutely. It's pretty remarkable how far we've come, and it feels good to be able to play meaningful games in November.
Chip asked, "Am I going to make the BYU game? It's in my time zone." Yeah, but it's about a 9-hour drive. So it's pretty doggone far. But I mean, I hadn't even thought about it. Maybe that's something I may put, some thought into. But it's a pretty darn far drive, But we'll see what happens.
Well, I'm gonna have to take a nap just to stay up until 9 o'clock Central Time. So it's going to be a late game.
That's a late game, yeah.
We're getting a little bit long on time here, but we should probably close out the show. It was announced, I think, over the weekend that the Iowa State-Iowa duel that's going to be held on November 26th is going to be on ESPN. Any thoughts there?
Hey, I got to go with the Cyclones. It should be a great one. But, I'm gonna go, obviously, with my home team, the Cyclones, and I'll try to tune in and watch that, man. It'll be a great duel.
It doesn't matter. Anytime we go against Iowa, we're going to go with the home team, without a doubt. We can be 0 and whatever, which I don't anticipate that happening this year. But it's going to be a good game. It's something that we definitely, everybody in the Cardinal, go look forward to those games. That game against Iowa, you and I and Drake. Like he was saying, like I lost some games to Drake. Believe it or not, especially my last year. So there's always that in-state rival that we look forward to. We look forward to being the victor of that game. No one never really sweeps the state, so that's the biggest thing about it that keeps everyone on edge. So we're looking forward to having a good game and coming out with a victory. Of course, we love the things that the team is doing, the recruits that have come in, and we're looking forward to that being a victory that night for sure.
All right. Well, that's another episode of In the Side of the Storm. Keith, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show tonight. And
honor.
Yep. And we wish you all the best. Hope to see you back here in the near future again. And,
thank you very much. I appreciate you having me, and thinking about maybe bringing my son out for the Matt Campbell football camp this summer. So when they give the dates, I'll have to see what I can do and bring him back for that. Get him truly indoctrinated into the Iowa State program.
I can tell you're a great father then, Keith.
Thank you.
All right. Marcus, good to see you as always. And we'll see everyone else next week.
You guys as well. Nice meeting you, Keith.